go, shall we?
Yeah, mate. Let's do it. I'll mute out for me.
Hey team, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pretty roller coaster of a day for us. We've done all sorts of webinars and meetings and all sorts of stuff. So this is the last one in a long series of educational pieces for our team. So thank you for joining us. And some of you I can see have had the stamina to be there for most of that journey. So well done to you. Why are we here? The topic that we're covering today is about, the technological solutions for working from home. I don't need to explain the context behind that. We're all living and breathing it. And the fact that we're talking via these mechanisms right now is testament to its relevance. We've got John, we call him John Kraken because no one can pronounce his last name. He's a valued member of our team. But the Kraken will be talking to you today about his knowledge in AV systems. And moreover, the so what of this is we're trying to give people a sense of calm in the sense that you don't need to go out buying all manner of devices and technology. And we should be buying technology up to the level that is required and only that level. And so hopefully by the end of today's discussion, we've had a good understanding of that, what that looks like. And you might be able to sit comfortably knowing that the systems that you've got are representing you well, they're acquitting your brand well, and that might be all that you need. And for the other people who might be delving into podcasting, delving into webinars like we are now, you might now have a bit of knowledge about the technology that might be suitable for you, and they might be very, very simple and easy purchases. Just to provide a little bit of context, for me, we'll go into the levels that we've defined in this particular presentation, but I would say that when, not 3 months ago, I, with my systems at home, sat at level 1, and for only an additional 200 Australian dollars was able to jump it to what we've defined as level 3. And, that's what you're seeing now. It presents quite well. It's multiple purpose, so we can use it in different ways to achieve different effects. But some of the things we're going to talk about today are not super expensive and some are. So let's know the distinction between the two. And without further ado, we will move on. So the outcome from today is understanding the effect you're trying to achieve, and getting what you need and avoiding what you don't. Simple as that. And now let's open that door. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Dave. It's probably the best way to start this is just to talk about AV for a second and just figure out what it actually is, because it's very easy to just say AV gear or AV technical gear and not actually have an understanding of what that encompasses. So very briefly, it's about communication. So obviously, especially when you're doing these kind of working from home scenarios, it's very important that you be able to communicate well. So all AV systems, whether they're, and you can see on the slide here, whether it's an LED, a microphone, an office meeting room where you can, or huddle space they're called, where you can video conference people, or if you're presenting in a training room or a conference type scenario, it's basically anything that helps you communicate better. The 4 main pillars, as you can see, there are audio, video, control, and input. So most of that's pretty self-explanatory. Input generally is like what Dave's doing now, essentially, which is inputting his laptop to feed in this slide as well. So any sort of HDMI input or anything like that, or a microphone. Knowing that now and getting sort of through that, I want to go through a couple of quick tips on how to set up, because I think it's very important when you're in a professional setting, whether it's as an employee or as a business owner. I think it's very important to understand that how you present and how you set things up is crucial to what you do as a business. So if you could just go to the next slide, Dave, or I know whoever's controlling. Okay, so let's start with the obvious, which is lighting. Natural light is preferred, so if you can be facing a window that'd be great. It generally gives a much more ambient look than, say, a direct spotlight or anything like that. Obviously, that's not always the case. Some people don't have either a window where they are, or if they do have a window, maybe too small or have too much shadow. So in those scenarios, for a very small amount, you can invest in selfie halos. They're basically just a round LED light that costs next to nothing. They're dimmable. You can change the color of them, so to a warmer light or a brighter light. Sit that behind your camera. That's all you need. So real simple. Jono and I were we did a quick search through, believe it or not, Kmart, and actually found some $15 lights that were 3 different warm, white, cool. I'm not sure if they were dimmable, but they basically cover what we're trying to talk about. You could buy them. I'm not suggesting they're going to be the greatest thing in the world, but if you're struggling for light and you need something at a low cost, I mean, even something like that would probably work. The next thing is obviously camera height. Ideally, a camera would be situated around eye level, or either just above or just below. You can see in the photo there, I specifically took a photo from my laptop, which has a camera right down near the keyboard. The amount of conferences I've been in where all I can see is people's fingers in front of, because they're touching the keyboard, is ridiculous. So think about what the people you're talking to are actually seeing, and make sure that you have enough, you've adjusted your height accordingly. Testing. So I don't want to get too technical because really we're trying to make this as easy as possible for everyone, but I do have to very quickly talk about something which is Hertz, and it was in the title, I think, of this webinar, sorry, that all lights flash at a particular rate, and that rate is called a cycle or Hertz. Now, the thing with that is, if your camera happens to be at the same frequency, what will happen is you'll get these black bars across your video feed. I don't know if anyone's seen that when they're talking to someone. It's very common with fluoro lights, essentially. What a lot of people don't realize is if you have the software for your camera, you can actually go in and change from 50 hertz to 60 hertz. You can change the cycle on your camera, which then eliminates those black bars. Specifically there for that reason. So make sure your camera is right, your video is right. It's always a good thing to test this beforehand, before you get onto any sort of webinar. Same with your microphone levels. Make sure they're obviously not too loud or too soft. Check that. If you have to call someone else beforehand to check, by all means. Obviously, laptop. If you're using a laptop and it's not plugged in, make sure you've got enough battery. So it sounds self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised again. And headphones. Make sure if on Windows 10 you may be connected. Sorry, let me rephrase that. You may connect your headphones, but the output may be selected to something else. So make sure you've selected the correct output. Next is the dress professionally. So again, this is, if you're in a business meeting, dress like you're in a business meeting. Don't Dave's photo down the bottom of the slide there. That's probably not how you want to present in a meeting, right? So
it's rehearsals, mate. That was rehearsals.
It's a good example, and that's why we put it on there. So at the end of the day, you want to dress professionally for any meeting you have. It's also good for your own mental state. I mean, if you don't get out of the clothes you slept in and you sit down and start working, it's not good mentally, right? Get to work, dress accordingly, and get started. Also, like in any meeting, you would have this water or tea or a coffee or something that people would ask you before you had that meeting. Do the same at home. Make sure you've got whatever you need. Make sure you go to the toilet, be comfortable, get ready for the meeting. Some basic good habits: mute your mic. Webinars have the lovely feature that by default that's everyone's muted initially, and then the host chooses who he or she unmutes. So The reason for that is, as I mentioned prior, especially now that we're all working from home, most of us probably have screaming kids in the background. And whilst you're probably completely deaf to it now, everyone else isn't yet. So make sure you mute your mic. It's always a good idea. Also, something that a lot of people don't know is if, as is the case currently, your internet slows down, your connection is bad because so many people are on, consider turning your video off as well, because that'll reduce the amount of data going backwards and forwards, which will then obviously hopefully give you a better audio at least, and you'll still be able to see everyone. Have a backup. That's also a big thing. So phone, put it on do not disturb. Have the app for whatever you're using on there ready to go. In a worst case scenario, if I lose my internet and my laptop dies, I can still jump on my phone and get onto this one. Always a good point. Now, if you're hosting a webinar or a podcast, consider having a concierge or a producer. In this case, Jono is doing that nicely for us by being on the chat room. In a podcast scenario, you might have someone adjusting microphone levels according to the guest who's speaking and recording certain things. So it's always handy to be able to, as I'm doing now, just talk and present while someone else does the background work. So that's it for the good habits. I think we can get stuck straight into the different types, essentially, of AV and cheap, everything from cheap or budget setups to the more expensive setups, depending on what you're trying to do. So,
John, just before we do that quick transition,
sure.
What I'd just say as a little bit of context is everything's gone topsy-turvy, but in that has provided a lot of opportunity. So, with a short amount of preparation and rehearsal, you can now present a lot better than everyone else, i.e. your competitors in your operating environment, by just making some of these very, very small adjustments. There was a term some time back done by the British cycling team called the aggregation of marginal gains. And what that talks about is all these 1% factors over time accumulate to an exponential effect at the other end. These little things about presentation actually go a very, very long way to securing the legitimacy of your brand, both personal and company, as well as the services that you actually provide. Talking about that halo ring thing that he was talking about, it's about $15 to $30 online. If you ever need a good example of that, look at Clifford Morgan on LinkedIn. He has one of those, and you see the quality of his deliveries, and his videos are very, very high, but it was a very low cost adjustment. And we were talking to him the other day about that. The other way that might support people well is recording off a separate Zoom meeting prior. So if you want to test all your levels and make sure that you sound and present well, then record yourself on a Zoom meeting by yourself, which is a free capability, and then you can see how you sound. I've done that with this particular system. If this conks out, then it will switch to audio there. If the video conks out on my camera, it'll switch to my laptop camera. And I've tested that to make sure it works. I'm now comfortable, and now we're presenting. So just take that in mind. It doesn't take a long time to do, but it speaks to the professionalism of you and what you deliver. Thanks, John. We'll transition.
Nice, thank you. Okay, so your type ones. Now, type one is what most people have already, at this point, probably used frequently with minimal issues. It's a single device. Generally, this is great for, especially now that all kids, again, are back at school. We've got, online learning for all of them. They're using iPads or laptops or phones to get into classrooms and see what they're doing. Lot of obviously from a price point of view, because everyone already has a phone or a laptop, the cost is nothing. It's free, right? At this point, there's no extra cost. Your positives are obviously it's portable, simple to use, multi-purpose, and easily accessible because you already have them for work. So these are great as an entry level. obviously, there are negatives that come with this kind of stuff, as I've written there. Limited functions, poor video and audio. Now, I'll stop on that point real quickly, because whilst the cameras on our phones are great, and to the point here, Dave is actually recording his off of a phone. His feed is actually coming off of a phone, not his laptop. The cameras are great. When I say poor, I mean, if, for example, Dave had a whiteboard behind him and he wanted to use his camera to zoom into what he was writing to present to everyone else, it would be terrible. The image would be no good. So it's poor depending on what you're trying to do, I guess. The other problem with phones is, because what you're using on it is not the only thing that's on it, you're going to be very easily distracted. Right? Facebook will pop up, and Snapchat and everything else that you use, and you can't have that happening. So, and the final thing is longevity, which is essentially all these things are great, but because you're using them all the time, you drop them, you break them, they slow down because of other apps you put on and all that kind of stuff. So again, you have issues with it freezing or something like that, and you have to go and upgrade and get a new phone, which, look, you may be doing anyway, and that's fine, but it's something to consider. So there is a thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, and that's codecs. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but a codec is basically a coder decoder. It's just an abbreviation of that. What it does is it allows you to send things like video and audio to various point-to-point situations. A soft codec is software related, so Zoom, Teams, Skype for Business, anything like that. They're all soft codecs. Great, but all the grunt work is done in the software. There's no physical hardware. There is, which we'll talk about later on, hard codecs as well. They're your more traditional conference systems that you'll see out in corporations, meeting rooms, boardrooms. There's usually a hard codec there. That's a more enterprise level. We'll get into that later. But so the difference, obviously, is soft codecs are readily available and easy to install on anything. So that's where most people start off with. And as Dave said, he started off here, and for minimal cost, actually jumped to a type 2, almost type 3 scenario. So if we switch to the type 2, I can show you there. So we're looking at, this is probably the setup that most people have for work, I'd suggest, or some similar setup, which is they're now running a monitor as well as their laptop. Potentially you've bought a USB webcam as well. And if you're doing podcasts or webinars, you could be using your iPhone to record it. These, again, you can buy a cheap headset. You can go to Officeworks and pick one up for about $30, I think. They don't cost much. Having said that, as is always the case, the more you spend, the better quality you get generally. So you don't need to go too silly, but if you can afford a little bit extra, that helps. The webcam also substantially helps. I'm running just a standard Logitech web camera. I'm not running anything crazy, but it's substantially better than what's on my laptop. Laptop manufacturers generally don't focus on the camera because it's not the primary function of the laptop, obviously. So they'll just put something in that doesn't cost too much, and it does the job. But if you can get a dedicated equipment, that's always a lot better. So on that, obviously the positives being better experience, less issues, easier to use all day. Because a lot of you are working from home, you don't want to be hunched over a laptop for 8 hours, right? You want to be able to be more comfortable, have a keyboard, sit at a desk, and work effortlessly to a certain extent. There is the minor costs outlay as a negative, and it is less portable. But once you set it up, you should be pretty good. So in terms of, now I don't know if Dave, did you want me to go over particular brands? I was trying to keep it relatively brand agnostic,
I don't think that's probably required in this forum. But what I would say, team, is where John mentioned that I'm using my phone. To put that into simple terms, I did that so I didn't have to spend any money because I'm stingy. So I downloaded. I have a Samsung. I downloaded an app called Droid Cam, and there are plenty of other apps that suit this purpose. It's completely free. I had to download that onto my phone, and then I downloaded it onto my laptop, and I followed some simple instructions to link the two. They can link by Wi-Fi, so I could put this on one side of the room or on the other side of the house and run it to my laptop. So that could be very handy for certain circumstances for people that might want to stand up and present and those sorts of things. Or alternatively, I can run it via USB cable, which is what I'm doing in this instance. So what that looks like in really basic terms is I've got a little tripod, I'll bring it over here, little tripod that's behind my laptop at the moment with a little phone holder in it, which it's a lot more advanced tripod. It's got a little, bubble and everything like that, tells me what level is and all that. That cost me $20, including the phone holder itself. And then I clicked it into my laptop. So now I have my phone on airplane mode, so I'm not getting all those notifications, linked to my laptop for basically a $20 solution, and I get a very good outcome. Well, I'm happy with the outcome. So don't think that you have to necessarily buy a webcam. Use the technologies you've got available, and you'll be surprised at what integrates these days and what YouTube videos will explain from step to step how you can use. So just think a little bit outside the box and you can do yourself very well. That's all I'll say about that, John, before we transition to the next bit.
Sure. And I should say also, just following on that, as is always the case, depending on how much you want to get into configuration and setup, you can save more, obviously. Now, this is the ongoing argument that's been happening since Apple came out and with iPhones and Samsung. It's not Apple versus Samsung. It's usability and flexibility. Now, Samsungs are more flexible, or any Android phone, but they require more setup to be able to use that flexibility, right? Apple gives you the borders and says this is what you can play within, and that's all, But because of that, you can't break it. It's just it's simple to use and it's very easy. So the same applies with tech, in that if you want something that just doesn't break and that doesn't require any setup, then that's fine. You probably have to pay a little bit extra because people have put a lot of time in doing that for you in developing that technology. If not, and you don't mind learning off YouTube or whatever, and you want to spend a bit of time, you can save yourself a lot of money as well. So, sorry, that was just a bit of an aside. Let's move on to the type 3 scenarios. So they're here to party. Now, this is where we're at with where Dave and John are, and they've actually surpassed me at this point with this. I'm actually still running my earbuds, but so in this kind of scenario, what you generally have, and we've got a good mixture here for webinars and podcasts, and also for video conferencing. You've got a dual monitor set up, so there's a little bit extra expense there. So there's maybe another $300 for the second monitor. A microphone with what's called a pop filter. So that, Dave, if you could just show everyone your little pop filter there, the little round disc over the microphone.
Oh, yes, just here.
Or Jono, yeah, there you go.
This is this thing here that I'm holding with my hand.
That's it, yep.
Yep, and on the image on the screen, it's this fella here.
That's right, yeah. So that, again, something very simple, but that filter, so when you hear people talk on a microphone, when they say any word with a letter P or P or B, you get a little crackle on the mic. This stops that. It's just a filter to stop that air that you blow out when you say the letter P or B. Again, tiny little thing, but makes a big difference. When John and Dave got this microphone, And this wasn't an expensive microphone. I don't believe you spent that much. What, $60 or something?
$100 Australian.
Oh, $100. Okay, right, there you go.
And that included the arm and all the bits and bobs that came with it.
Right, there you go. So, but the audio difference between what you were using before and now is substantially better. Right. So, from a webcast or podcast or webinar point of view, this is what you want, right? Even on a video conferencing, if you spend a lot of time and don't want to have a boom mic on a headset or something like that, you can get desk versions of that. It just sits on the desk rather than the whole arm scenario. They, similar cost, again, substantially changes everything.
In this case, John, it came in the same pack, so I have both available.
There you go. Beautiful.
There you go.
So,
Jono's holding that up now.
excellent. And I will say, Jono's actually got, so that big phone piece that he held up as well, which also came in the pack, is fits over the microphone. So if you want to go portable, so if you're outside interviewing people and it's windy, that stops the wind noise, right? So there's actually, again, for $100, the stuff you can get is amazing. The days when you'd spend, ridiculous amounts of money on a microphone for this kind of stuff, it's gone. It's been getting cheaper and cheaper. The cameras when you're conferencing, so there's two cameras there. One is a sound bar with a camera built in, and it also has a built-in microphone as well. Now you're starting to get into the commercial grade stuff, basically, with that. That tends to be used in huddle spaces for sort of meetings of 4 to maybe 6 people, 4 people usually. They do cost a bit more, but the audio and video experience in it is substantially better. So if you're in a scenario where you're now as a business owner, or you're having a lot of conferences a day, you would potentially think about something like that, because at the end of the day, the experience is completely different, and this will last you for years, right? A lot of these cameras are 4K cameras, so they far exceed the capability of any software that's currently being used. The reason for that being, going back to what we were saying before about the webcam as a camera, the iPhone, your smartphone as a camera, a 4K camera can zoom in digitally behind you without losing any resolution on a feed. So again, from a business point of view, very important. There's also ones like that little square one there that you can see. Not the only one by any means, but they actually have tracking. So if you're in a scenario where you're sitting here and you're, for example, in a bigger room where you're walking around pointing at different things, again, that'll actually track you. So very, very important to have that kind of stuff, because realistically, you're future-proofing yourself, pardon me. Again, obviously not portable on the negative side of things, and they will need to be set up usually by the sound bars specifically as well by someone professional. You can do it yourself if you've got the time. Sometimes it's, depending on how valuable your time is, it's cheaper just to pay someone to do it for you. And the branded banner, as we've got there, the 8 Mile one. So Zoom and Teams now let you put on a virtual background as well, obviously. So that's something to consider if you don't want everyone to see your background. I would say, if you want to use a virtual background, I'd probably suggest getting a green screen, so just some sort of green background, and using that with Zoom. It's far better than Zoom's AI in doing that, because you don't look like a cutout that's been stuck in a picture as much, basically. So if you can do, and it doesn't have to be anything. Again, it can be literally, you can go to Spotlight and just get a green sheet and just drop it behind you. It doesn't have to be anything special. So that'll help. So if we now
just on that, John,
yeah.
John's the tech guy and the he's always into the AV solution side of things. Jono, myself, and Sam are very visual in the sense that we take our brand very seriously in the way we present. The way you'll always see us in our colours. You'll always see us representing. We're very proud of our brand, and so we display it with pride. And so that sends a very strong message to people that we engage with, that we're consistent, we're very loyal to the services that we provide and the values that we adhere to. So don't underestimate the effect that the banner has. You can buy very cheap solution banners as well from a variety of different providers, both locally and internationally, and with very quick turnaround times. So if you find yourself in a position at the moment that you think you might be like this for the next couple of months, you're in sales, you're in discussions with clients, that might be a good indicator or trigger for you to consider looking into that. What might be, $100 banner might be able to secure you deals that secure thousands of dollars of revenue because of the professionalism that you display. So think of it as a bit of a return on investment, as well as a message to say that you're very proud about what it is that you do.
Not to mention the subliminal factor of it as well. I mean, even if we take the 8th Mile banner there, when you have that behind you and people are talking to you, people see service, initiative, accountability, integrity, and it's there as a constant reminder. So when someone finishes a meeting with you, they go, you know what, I like Dave. He's got a lot of integrity, and they don't even know why, because it's there. So there's no harm at all from a business point of view in having that kind of stuff. In fact, it's almost necessary, I suggest. So,
mate, it's all the banner, isn't it?
It's it. All right. Let's go on to the Type 4. Now, I will say with the Type 4, actually, before we do, Dave, we call this, I called it the executive suite, because it's not something that your average person would have in their house. Well, I'll be honest, right? It's what this would be is if you're a business owner or you're an executive in a company, in a large corporation, this is dedicated equipment that would work for you for what you're trying to do. And realistically, if you're in that kind of position, you should have dedicated equipment. You know what I mean? It's not, this whole multi-purpose stuff doesn't work where you're talking, when your time is worth thousands of dollars an hour, you can't afford to have anything fail, essentially. So this is by no means as big as what you would have in, for example, a boardroom, executive boardroom. This is, again, we're still sticking with things you would have at home if you were a business owner or an executive in a large corporation. So and from a podcast or webinar point of view, again, if you get to that point where you're hosting a lot and you want to, you're posting your, say, podcasts on Spotify or what the Apple podcast, I think it's called. Then again, you want to have some same microphones are fine, but you want to have some sort of mixing equipment like the Rodecaster Pro we've got there in the picture, which allows you to adjust everyone's volumes and things like that. It's a far better solution. I will talk about the images before I go into the positives and negatives. The middle system there is, now we're starting to get into that hard codecs thing that I was referencing. The reason these are important is if you may or may not have seen the news about Zoom's security, the dramas that sort of came up, and they've had to come in and basically come in with patches for their security and make sure things are safe. Most famous example of that was, I think Hamish Blake managed to get the Zoom number for a Defence Force meeting and dialed in, which completely changed. There was a new rule made that Zoom wasn't to be used in the Defence Force after that, which is excellent. But the point of that is end-to-end encryption. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but a hard codec will do that, right? The reason people have gone to soft codecs is hard codecs usually come with annual subscription licensing fees that are expensive. But again, a corporation usually is paying those already for other devices. So that middle one there is a Cisco all-in-one kit, hard codecs built into it. So you would literally use that for nothing else other than video conferencing. And it sits on your desk. You can put your laptop into it and use it as a monitor as well. But that's it. That's literally its only function. The trolley on the right there is, again, for an executive, if he's having a meeting, he or she are having a meeting that have, say, 20 people in the meeting dialing in, trying to see 20 people on the 27-inch desk monitor is ridiculous. So then you start talking bigger screens, 4K screens, all-in-one kits that they can wheel around accordingly. To put some costs to some of this stuff, a trolley like that you could purchase from an integrator for as little as maybe 6,000 to 10,000, and as much as I've personally sold one for 60,000+. So there's, depending on the levels, again, you can get varying things. Now, I've covered most of the stuff on that. What I would say, actually, I'll hold off on the cost of this just yet. Like I said, it can get quite expensive. However, I'll throw something else in the next slide once while Dave's talking, just to put that in perspective to some other costs.
The key point that stands out to me, John, is it's contextual. It's,
Correct.
Depending on what type of service you provide, don't rule this out as an option, because for maybe 5% of the people out there at the moment, this is a must-have for the services that they provide. For 95% of us, it might not be relevant at this time, and we're probably looking at level 2 or 3. And there's, not a large price gap between those two. So just put it in context and understand why we're showing you, because we owe it to those 5%.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So, Dave, I'll let you take over on this one if you like.
Yeah, great. So look, the world's going to change now. We've now, as a society, proven that working from home is an option. And moreover, for many businesses, they've now been forced to realize that that reality, and they now are going to start seeing the benefits associated with very low overheads. So you're going to start seeing a number of organizations transition very, very quickly to having large portions of their workforce operating from home, because the precedent has now been set. As Sam has mentioned aptly in the chat, the real test is how long you think or you predict that these circumstances, these environmental changes, will prove true for you and your company and your services. If you think that they're going to last a very long time, well, then now is the time to start investing in these types of technologies, because then you can get the return on investment by using that technology for a longer period of time. We all understand that technology is an evolving beast, and the windows of redundancy are coming quicker and quicker. So in that respect, you want to get the absolute maximum amount of time out of the technology you have. And in my case, I like to repurpose technologies I've already got at hand. I'll let John at the end explain some of the real estate costs associated with having a desk space in a enterprise or corporate setting, particularly insofar as cities. So, high rises and those sorts of things where real estate is at a premium. The cost of having a person sitting at a desk is in the tens of thousands. And now businesses are going to realize that because they've been pressure tested to prove it. So don't be surprised if we're going to start seeing some floor space open up in some of these highly dense areas, and a transition happen where organizations will see the true investment about purchasing or hiring or leasing these technologies in order to allow their workforce to work from home. This is a really fundamental change to the way that most businesses are going to operate. So don't rule it out as an option.
That's right. Dave, I'll just jump in real quickly on that. It's funny that because you said pressure tested, it's true. That's completely true. People have always worked from home. This isn't something new, right? What's different is we've never seen this level of people working from home. And the reason for that has nothing to do with technology, and it has nothing to do with, from a business point of view, of course you'd want less people in the office, because if it costs you, the cost, by the way, is in Brisbane, it's about $14,500 a year per desk. That's roughly the operational cost. Operational real estate, it's about $300 a square metre, roughly, in Brisbane CBD, just for the area you're getting. And if you consider on top of that, 30% of meeting rooms that are booked never actually go ahead, so the room remains empty. You have 30% of your meeting rooms never get used, right? So that's a lot of space that just doesn't get used at all. And so the question, I guess, is why, to your point about pressure testing, the reason people haven't been working this much at home before Corona is because, quite frankly, what it comes down to is micromanaging. Managers and business owners were too scared. Well, what if we let them go and work from home? How do we know they're working? Are they actually going to be productive? The reality is there's plenty of studies that show that, yes, not only are you productive, but you actually have improved performance because you're not distracted and, by people talking about their weekend and, everything at work. So it is, and because of the distance, there's actually, as it says, there's better collaboration. So now that under the circumstances, businesses have actually realized that, actually, we don't have to hold the reins so tight. People actually get the work we ask them to do done. They can start to see the benefits of, so if I talk about that trolley, if you pick up one of those trolleys for $10,000, but you're saving $14,000 a year for having a desk, having someone work at home, it's even the little sound bars with a microphone. I mean, that's $1,500 to $2,000. Why wouldn't you spend $2,000 on helping someone work from home when instead of spending $14,000 to have an office, a desk space? So while some of those numbers towards the end might have sounded quite large, when you look at what you could save from an operational point of view, it's quite substantial. So, sorry, Dave, I didn't jump in on there. But
great amplifying points. The other thing that we have up on the slide is the implications regarding time zones and global clients. So global work, engagement with your clients. And, I can speak from firsthand experience in the last 7 to 8 weeks. The 8th Mile has almost tripled its international engagement and is now forming the basis of many of our future strategies as well. So don't write this off. The fact that someone can work from home means that they're also not required to be in the workspace, which means that they are now available to engage international clients in time zones that suit the client. So they might be able to start late at home, but they also might be able to go to bed at midnight. And in doing so, you open up a whole new world of opportunities for your services to be delivered to people. So don't rule that out. When you talk about the return on investment, about purchasing a piece of kit that might sound very expensive, such as a $2,000 soundbar, if that allows you to engage with overseas clients and you charge out at $1,400 a day, you're going to make that up very, very quickly had you not done that. Does that make sense? The other thing I was going to mention too is software as a service. Software as a service basically is the fancy way of saying apps. Apps and software that we use on our computers and our phones and our portable devices. Software as a service has opened up a whole new world with people being able to develop technology at an incredible rate as they see demand requiring it. What this means in practical terms is we're actually talking on software as a service right now. This is Zoom. In time, Zoom will be replaced by something else, as Zoom replaced Skype very, very quickly. And you'll start seeing, Microsoft Teams replacing Skype as well, which is actually part of Microsoft's plan. But what I'm saying is, don't underestimate how quickly software as a service integrates with technology and then repurposes things very, very quickly, such as I'm using my phone right now as a webcam. That's only the tip of the iceberg for where that exponential growth goes. So as a business, be looking forward to that because software as a service is very, very cheap and opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. John, are you happy to move to the next?
Yeah, I'll just add something very quickly to that, which is it's not just technology based. What I mean by that is, if you think it's only affecting what you use tech-wise, all I need to do is point you to something like Netflix and show you how it actually affects your day-to-day life. So Netflix is software as a service. You pay a monthly fee and you get to watch something. You don't go to a video store anymore, or you don't get a DVD. So Lyft will, once autonomous cars start, Lyft will probably buy a fleet of cars, and you won't own a car. You'll just pay a subscription, call a Lyft, or a Uber or whatever. So I can't wait for that day. Just got to leave it. But the point is, it affects us day to day. So software as a service it's where everything is going. Office 365, you don't buy Office anymore. You just pay a subscription. So it's going that way. And I think it's going to make life a lot better for people. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on that one.
Closing points, team, in the interest of not wasting people's time late on a Wednesday afternoon or early morning in other parts of the world. Look, keep it simple. Buy what you need. Avoid what you don't. Don't be that person that just goes buying technology as a knee-jerk reaction. It will not serve you well. If you need to have a discussion about any of this sort of stuff, we're happy to pass on, just on the side, some of the tips and hints that we've come up with about how we set up our systems. And just by the by, every single webinar I have done in the last 3 weeks or so, I have had a completely different setup. Because each of them has been to serve a different purpose, and I'm testing our technologies in different ways before we transition onto our online training packages. So, we're actually learning as we go as well, and we thought we'd take this opportunity to pass on some of that information so you don't have to recreate the wheel. Don't underestimate the implications of training your staff on the technologies or the platforms that you want them working on. I believe someone wrote in the chat just recently about, Amanda, she wrote, my organization has had us move to online teaching without providing any resources to facilitate this. And I suspect that would also include the training on those platforms if they did exist in any case. That puts a huge amount of pressure on people like Amanda, who now have to come up with some weird and wacky way to communicate with their students in this case. And the other part of this is, from a branding perspective, whoever she supports each of the staff members are going to come up with a different solution in a different way. And so when we have to bring it all back together at the end, it's going to be a confusing mess. So don't underestimate the implications of change management and taking this very seriously and taking people along the journey. And in fact, that's what we do in the 8th Mile. We work with organizations to help them go through that transition, train people up, make people change leaders, and then we make sure that it actually is a successful transition. I wrote in there too, technology does not replace good content. I mean, you can have all the fancy Gucci equipment in the world, but if the message is poor, it will never land in any case. So always revert back to your strategy and your key messages, because that has precedence in every sense of the word. And don't be looking at all these things as short-term investments. Look at it as one stepping stone in a longer-term investment on your brand, your personal brand, and the way that you present to others, because that professional reputation goes a long way to serving you, not just in this 2020, but out to 230 and 240 and so on. So from our team to you, thank you very much. It's been an absolute blessing to have you here today. John, have you got any points you'd like to add?
No, I just wanted to say thank you as well. Thank you for the opportunity. I genuinely just hope this has been helpful for everyone.